What happens when the Queen of Country, a woman who has been entertaining America for 5 decades, who has sold over 90 million records and built an empire that spans music, television, and beyond, sits down on a late-night talk show expecting playful banter, only to find herself ambushed by a host whose idea of entertainment is making guests uncomfortable for laughs? What you're about to witness is one of the most shocking confrontations ever captured on late-night television. The moment when Reba McEntire, the red-haired legend who has handled everything from personal tragedy to industry politics with unshakable grace, reminded everyone watching that Southern charm comes with Southern steel. The clubhouse went dead silent, the shot ski sat untouched, and Andy Cohen discovered that some queens don't play games. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure to subscribe and drop your thoughts in the comments because, trust me, you're going to want to talk about this one. The evening had started with the usual chaotic energy at the Watch What Happens Live clubhouse in Soho. The neon lights were glowing, the bar was stocked, and the staff was buzzing with anticipation. Reba McEntire was coming on the show, and everyone knew that having country music royalty in the clubhouse was a big get. At 69 years old, Reba remained one of the most beloved and respected entertainers in America, a woman whose career had not only survived but thrived through every change in the music industry. Behind the scenes, sources would later reveal that Andy had been making comments to his producers about wanting to get the real Reba on camera. He found her public persona too polished, too controlled, too perfect. He wanted to crack through that famous composure and get some genuine drama for his show. Andy had convinced himself that beneath Reba's gracious exterior was someone with secrets and grievances that just needed the right questions to bring to the surface. It was a fundamental miscalculation about a woman who had survived tragedy and triumph with equal dignity. The clubhouse lights were hot as Reba took her seat in the famous interview chair, a cocktail placed in front of her that she accepted with a gracious smile. The live studio audience cheered enthusiastically, many of them fans who had grown up with her music and watched her sitcom religiously. "Reba McEntire in the clubhouse, everybody," Andy announced with his characteristic energy. "The Queen of Country herself. I am so excited to have you here." "Oh, Andy, thank you so much for having me," Reba replied, her Oklahoma accent warm and welcoming. "I just love this show. Y'all have the most fun over here." "We do try," Andy said with a grin. "So, let's get right into it. You've been in this business for, 50 years now? You've seen everything. You've done everything. But I want to talk about the stuff you don't usually talk about. The real tea, as the kids say." Reba laughed good-naturedly. "Well, Andy, I'm an open book. What do you want to know?" The first few minutes went smoothly enough. Andy asked about The Voice, about her recent performances, about her life with Rex Linn. Reba answered with her trademark warmth and humor, charming the audience and giving Andy the kind of engaging television that had made her a favorite guest on every talk show in America. Then Andy's expression shifted to something more predatory. "So, Reba, let's talk about your divorce from Narvel. That was almost 10 years ago now? You were married for 26 years. He was your manager, your business partner, your everything, and then suddenly it was over. What really happened there? Because the story you've told publicly feels very sanitized." The question was clearly designed to probe a wound. Reba's smile flickered almost imperceptibly, but her voice remained steady. "Andy, my divorce from Narvel was a difficult time in my life, like any divorce is. But we handled it with respect for each other and for our family. We raised a son together. We built businesses together. We shared a life for over 2 decades. Whatever happened at the end doesn't erase all of that. And I don't think there's anything sanitized about choosing to handle difficult situations with dignity. That's just how adults should handle the end of a marriage." Andy wasn't satisfied. He leaned back in his chair with that look that regular viewers of his show knew meant he was about to push harder. "But there were rumors, Reba. Rumors about other women. Rumors about business disagreements. Rumors about you finding out things that shocked you. Come on, this is the clubhouse. This is supposed to be a safe space where people can be real. You can tell us what really went down." The audience shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't the playful probing Andy was known for. This felt more like an interrogation. "Andy, I appreciate that you want good television, but some things are private for a reason. Narvel is the father of my son. We built a life together for over 2 decades. Whatever happened between us at the end, it's between us, not for entertainment." Andy leaned forward with that gleam in his eye that usually signaled he was about to push harder. "But don't you think your fans deserve the truth? You've built this image of being the perfect country queen, but we all know that nobody's life is that perfect. The divorce, losing your band in that plane crash, the rumors about feuds with other country artists. There's a lot more to the Reba story than you let people see." The mention of the 1991 plane crash that killed 8 members of her band, including her tour manager and 2 band members she had been particularly close to, seemed to strike Reba like a physical blow. Her expression changed in a way the audience had never seen before. "Andy, I need you to be very careful about what you're doing right now," Reba said, her voice quiet but carrying a new edge. "You can ask me about my divorce. You can ask me about industry gossip. But you do not get to use the deaths of my friends as fodder for your show." Andy seemed to realize he had touched something dangerous, but instead of backing off, he doubled down. "I'm just saying that you've been through a lot, and you always present this perfect image. Don't you ever just want to let people see the real you? The Reba who's angry, who's hurt, who has grievances? The real me?" Reba's laugh was short and carried no warmth. "You want to see the real me, Andy? The real me buried friends I loved. The real me had to get on stage the night after I found out they were gone because the show must go on. The real me has spent 30 years living with survivor's guilt because I wasn't on that plane." The clubhouse had gone absolutely silent. The usual party atmosphere had evaporated completely. The real me has handled more tragedy and more triumph than most people experience in 10 lifetimes. And I've done it with grace because that's how my mama raised me. Not because I'm hiding something, not because I'm fake, because dignity is how I honor the people I've lost. Andy tried to redirect. "Reba, I didn't mean to—" "Yes, you did," Reba cut him off, her voice firm. "You meant to get me rattled. You meant to crack through what you see as some kind of facade. Because in your world, everyone has to have drama, everyone has to have scandals, everyone has to have dirty laundry that you can air for ratings." She shook her head slowly. "But here's what you don't understand, Andy. Some people are exactly who they appear to be. Some people have learned through hard experience that grace under pressure isn't an act, it's a survival skill. And some people have earned the right to present whatever image they choose to the public because they've paid for it in ways you can't imagine." Andy shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "I think you're taking this more seriously than I intended. This is supposed to be a fun show. We're just having a conversation." "Are we?" Reba's eyebrow raised. "Because it felt more like you were trying to bait me into saying something I'd regret. Trying to get me to badmouth my ex-husband on television. Trying to get me to cry about the plane crash so you could have your viral moment. That's not conversation, Andy. That's exploitation." The word hung heavy in the air. The studio audience was completely silent, watching something they had never expected to see on the usually lighthearted show. "You know what I find interesting about people in your position?" Reba continued, her voice still calm but carrying an intensity that filled the room. "You've built a career on getting people to reveal things they shouldn't reveal, on catching them at vulnerable moments and broadcasting those moments to the world. But what have you ever revealed about yourself? What vulnerability have you ever shown?" Andy opened his mouth to respond, but Reba wasn't finished. "I've been in this business for 50 years. I've given interviews to thousands of journalists, hosts, reporters. And I can always tell the difference between someone who genuinely wants to understand me and someone who just wants to use me for content. You're the second kind, Andy, and I've been handling the second kind since before you knew what a television camera was." "Reba, I respect you enormously," Andy said, his usual confidence visibly shaken. "I'm not trying to use you. I'm just trying to have an interesting conversation that goes beyond the usual press tour answers." "No, you're not," Reba replied. "You're trying to break me. You're trying to find the crack in the armor, because that's what gets talked about. That's what goes viral. Reba McEntire breaks down on Watch What Happens Live. That's the headline you wanted. Well, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I don't break." She straightened in her chair, and despite the intimate setting of the clubhouse, there was something regal about her bearing. "I didn't break when my father told me I shouldn't pursue music. I didn't break when Nashville told me I was too country for country music. I didn't break when I lost friends in a plane crash that I should have been on. I didn't break when my marriage fell apart after 26 years. And I'm certainly not going to break because some talk show host thinks probing my wounds will make good television. Andy was clearly struggling to regain control of the interview. I think there's been a misunderstanding about my intentions. There's no misunderstanding, Reba said firmly. I've been doing this too long not to recognize what's happening. You decided before I walked in here that you were going to push until something gave, and now that nothing's giving, you're trying to backpedal. But I want to make something clear to you and to everyone watching. She turned to look directly at the camera. I am 69 years old. I've sold over 90 million records. I've had over 40 #1 hits. I've won every award this industry has to give. I've built a business empire that employs hundreds of people. I've starred in a television sitcom that ran for 6 seasons. I'm currently coaching the next generation of artists on The Voice, and I've done it all while being exactly who you see in front of you. Not a character, not an image, not some fabrication created by publicists. Me, Reba McEntire from McAlester, Oklahoma. Her voice carried across the silent studio with the same power that had filled arenas around the world for 5 decades. And the reason I've survived this long, the reason I'm still here when so many others have faded away, is because I know who I am. I know what I'm willing to share and what I'm not. I know the difference between being open and being exploited. And I refuse to let anyone, no matter how charming they think they are, manipulate me into being something I'm not for the sake of their ratings. She looked back at Andy. You asked earlier what the real me looks like. Well, this is her. A woman who has worked hard, loved deeply, lost painfully, and kept going anyway. A woman who treats everyone she meets with respect because that's how she was raised. A woman who doesn't need to tear other people down to build herself up. And a woman who has no patience for people who mistake her kindness for weakness. Andy seemed to shrink in his chair. The host, who was famous for making others uncomfortable, was now profoundly uncomfortable himself. Reba, I apologize if anything I said came across as disrespectful. That was never my intention. Wasn't it? Reba's voice was quiet but carried weight. Because from where I'm sitting, it felt very intentional. It felt like you saw an older woman from country music and thought you could push her around. Thought she'd be flattered enough to be on your hip show that she'd put up with whatever you threw at her. She shook her head. But I've played bigger rooms than this, Andy. I've handled tougher crowds than this. I've survived things that would have broken most people. And I didn't do it by letting people disrespect me just because they had a microphone and an audience. She stood up, and the movement seemed to command the attention of everyone in the studio. I came here tonight to have fun. To talk about my music, my show, my life with Rex. Instead, I've spent the last 15 minutes defending my divorce, my grief, and my right to privacy. That's not what I signed up for, and that's not what I'm going to continue doing. Andy stood as well, clearly trying to salvage the situation. Reba, please, sit down. We can start over. I'll stick to the topics you're comfortable with. The topics I'm comfortable with? Reba laughed, but there was no humor in it. Andy, I'm comfortable with any topic when it's approached with respect. What I'm not comfortable with is being treated like a piñata that you can hit until something interesting falls out. She gathered her things with the same grace she had shown entering the studio, though now that grace was armored with steel. You know what the difference between you and me is, Andy? I've built a career on lifting people up. My music makes people feel seen, understood, less alone in their struggles. Your career is built on catching people at their worst moments and making entertainment out of their pain. One of those things adds to the world. The other one just takes from it. She moved toward the exit, then turned back one final time. I want to say something to everyone watching. I've been blessed beyond measure in my life. Blessed with talent, blessed with opportunities, blessed with fans who have supported me for 50 years. And I've tried to deserve those blessings by being grateful, by working hard, and by treating people the way I'd want to be treated. Her voice softened slightly. But I've also learned that being kind doesn't mean being a pushover. Having grace doesn't mean letting people walk all over you. And being a lady doesn't mean you can't stand up for yourself when someone tries to diminish you. She looked at Andy one last time. I hope you'll think about this conversation, Andy. I hope you'll think about what kind of entertainment you want to create. Whether you want to be remembered as someone who brought joy into the world, or someone who exploited people's pain for ratings. Because at the end of the day, that's the choice we all make with whatever platform we're given. She straightened her jacket with the dignity of someone who had walked red carpets for 50 years. My mama always said that you can tell a lot about a person by how they treat people who can't do anything for them. Tonight, you showed me how you treat people when you think they're just content for your show, and I've learned everything I need to know. With that, Reba McEntire walked out of the Watch What Happens Live clubhouse, leaving behind a stunned silence that seemed to swallow the entire studio. The audience sat frozen, the bartenders stood motionless, and Andy Cohen remained at his desk looking like a man who had just realized he had made a terrible mistake. The show cut to commercial, but everyone knew that what had just happened couldn't be fixed with a break. The Queen of Country had been disrespected on national television, and she had responded by reminding everyone exactly why she had earned that title. Not through cruelty or drama, but through the quiet, unshakable dignity that had defined her entire remarkable career. The aftermath of that interview would dominate entertainment news for weeks. Clips of Reba's powerful defense of her privacy and her legacy would be shared millions of times across every social media platform. Country music fans rallied around their queen with a ferocity that surprised even longtime observers of the genre. Andy Cohen would issue an apology that many found insufficient, and the episode would become a cautionary tale about the difference between provocative interviewing and simple disrespect. But perhaps the most significant outcome was the conversation it sparked about how we treat legends, especially women of a certain age who have earned the right to be treated with respect. Reba McEntire had spent 50 years building a legacy of grace, talent, and hard work. And when someone tried to reduce that legacy to gossip and drama, she had shown exactly why she had lasted so long in an industry that discards people routinely. She knew her worth, she knew her boundaries, and she refused to let anyone forget either one. For those who had grown up listening to Fancy and Does He Love You, who had watched her sitcom religiously, who had cheered when she brought down the house at the Super Bowl, there was something deeply satisfying about watching Reba McEntire stand up for herself with such quiet, devastating dignity. She had proven once again that the Queen of Country wasn't just a title given to her by fans and critics. It was something she had earned through decades of hard work. Personal tragedy survived, and an unwavering commitment to treating people with respect even when they didn't deserve it. And somewhere in Nashville, a whole generation of country artists who had looked up to Reba their entire careers were reminded exactly why she had been their role model in the first place. Not because she was perfect, but because she knew how to handle imperfection with grace. Not because she never faced adversity, but because she faced it without losing herself. That was the real Reba McEntire. And she had just made sure everyone watching knew it. What do you think about this incredible confrontation? Was Andy Cohen out of line, or was he just doing his job? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe for more stories that will absolutely leave you speechless.